Irish guitar legend Gary Moore's 1990 record, Still Got the Blues, is one of those rare examples in life where doing something entirely different and taking a huge chance works out beyond your wildest dreams. Gary was a longtime veteran of the hard rock scene, having played with Thin Lizzy back in the 1970s and having spent most of the 1980s trying to crack into stardom in the hair metal scene. But by the end of the 1980s, he'd grown tired of that lifestyle and he knew that he was stagnating musically. Little did he know that the suggestion, hey, let's make a blues record, that was prompted by a backstage jam would be life-altering. The song Still Got the Blues, which was recorded in one take, by the way, lives on as a masterpiece years after Gary's untimely death. Today, we're going to learn that solo and not just the notes, a little bit of theory, and some practice tips on how you can take some of Gary's techniques and make them your own. I hope this song can be as meaningful to you as it has been to me. So let's get into this thing. Here we go. Now, before we get into the solos, let's take a little time to understand the chord progression we're going to be playing over. It's a timeless progression that can be found in the jazz standard Autumn Leaves, and also check out the beautiful Santana instrumental Europa to hear this progression used in a different way. There's a really cool little trick in this progression that allows it to flow between relative major and minor keys. Now, Still Got the Blues is in A minor, and it's a progression built on what we're going to call a diatonic cycle. And by that, I mean we're going to move through the chords in a key in a set way. And it starts with the chords of C major, which is the relative major of A minor. Now, the first chord in the progression is D minor 7, which is the second chord in the key of C. And the way these chords move, you can look at it as either ascending fourths or descending fifths. So from D, if I go up a fourth, I get a G note. If I go down a fifth, I get a G note. So G7 is the fifth chord in the key of C. Descending a fifth from G, we get a C note. And C major 7 is, of course, the one chord of C major. Descending a fifth from C, we get an F note, and F major 7 is the four chord in the key of C. Now, descending a fifth from F, we get B. And here's a really slick bit of music theory. The chord built off the B note in the key of C major is B minor 7 flat 5. But in this progression, it serves as a transition chord to the key of A harmonic minor. B minor 7 flat 5 is the two chord of that key. And down a fifth from B is E, and E7 is the five chord in the key of A harmonic minor. Down a fifth from E is the A note and A minor 7, and of course that's the one chord of A minor. So in this progression, we've got a major, what we call 2-5-1 in the key of C, which D minor 7, G7, and C. And then we've got a minor 2-5-1 with B minor 7 flat 5, E7, and A minor. That's in the key of A harmonic minor. And there's one last trick in this progression. After it comes home to A minor, Gary transitions back to C major to restart the progression by playing A7. Now, A7 would be the five chord in D minor, and the D note is a fifth below A. That gets us back to D minor, which is the first chord of our progression. Very, very cool. Now, 2-5-1 progressions are very common in the world of jazz, but also in pop and the sophisticated side of blues. I wanted to go through that because I think it's important to know the basis of what we're going to be soloing over. Now, I want to give you two ideas to practice that I think are going to be crucial to your development as a guitarist. The first one would be just playing through the seventh arpeggios of the progression. Now, the chord progression of the solo, we've got D minor 7, G7, C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E7, A minor 7, A7. Now, if we just run through some 2-octave arpeggio shapes, you're going to hear this progression very clearly. Here's D minor 7, G7, C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E7, A minor 7, A7. Now, we're not going to spend too much time here with these minor 7th arpeggios because I know you want to get to that solo, but I'm hoping you're going to go beyond just learning a solo and being able to regurgitate it like a parrot. I want you to actually understand this stuff. It's going to help you grow as a musician and a guitarist. Now, the other technique that Gary employs a lot in this solo is something that we might formally call melodic cells. I call these things triads plus one because what we're doing is taking a major or minor triad, adding one other non-chord tone to it to make a complete musical statement. These things are so useful and melodic sounding. Players like David Gilmour, Mark Knopfler, and Steve Lukather use them all the time. And I think they're so important that I've done several videos about them. Let's take what Gary plays in the intro and in big chunks of the solos and break it down. Now, over the first chord change, which is D minor 7 to G7, Gary plays the A note at the 10th fret of the B string, and then D and E at frets 10 and 12 of the E string, and he bends that E a half step up to F. Now, those notes are the 5th, the root, the 2nd, and the minor 3rd of D. And of course, the root, the minor 3rd, and the 5th give us a D minor triad. Adding the 2nd in there completes our melodic cell, or again, as I call it, a triad plus one. To complete the phrase, we re-articulate that bend and play back down to D. Now, D happens to be the 5th of G7. The next change, we've got C major 7 to F major 7. So we're going to use a major melodic cell this time. This time we start with the G at the 12th fret of the G string. We've got C and D at frets 13 and 15 of the B string. We're going to bend that D up a whole step to E. Those notes are the 5th, the root, the 2nd, and major 3rd of C. So that gives us our C major triad plus the 2nd interval, again for some color. Same pattern as before, we're going to re-articulate our bend and play back to the root. And the root happens to be the 5th of F major 7, so we've got another perfect transition. The next chord change after that is B minor 7 flat 5 to E7. And we're going to play A, B, and C at frets 10, 12, and 13 of the B string. We're going to bend that C up a whole step to D. That is the flat 7, the root, the 2nd, and minor 3rd of B. So while it's not a triad, we do get 3 of the 4 notes of the B minor 7 flat 5 chord. Again, we're going to re-articulate the bend and come back to our root B. Now, B is the 5th of E7. So once again, we complete that transition as before with a chord tone. And this concept is so simple, but it's so effective, and the melodies you can create with it are just beautiful and totally on point with how they outline the chord changes. Now listen to the similarities between Still Got the Blues and Carlos Santana's song Europa. Here's Still Got the Blues. Here's Europa. I could give you countless more examples of this technique used by David Gilmour, Mark Knopfler, Steve Lukather, Andy Timmons uses this all the time. It's a technique you really want to get, as I like to say, in your brain and under your fingers. Now let's get into that solo itself, because I know that's what you're waiting for. The first two chords, as we said before, are D minor 7 and G7. Gary plays that melodic cell at fret 10 of the B and E strings, fret 12 of the E string, and bends that note up a half step. Those notes are A, D, E, and F. We want to pay close attention to the phrasing he uses if we really want to nail this solo. And the first thing we need to note is on that bend up to F, he doesn't use any vibrato. And then we're going to re-articulate that bend and then play down E and F again. And he does put vibrato on the D note that finishes the phrase. And he also plays out of that D note with a downward slide. And he does that a lot in this solo. So here's our first phrase again. The next chord change is C major 7 to F major 7. We're going to play fret 12 of the G string, frets 13 and 15 of the B string, and we bend that 15th fret up a whole step. Those notes are G, C, D, and E. And this time, we're going to put vibrato on the bent note. And we're going to re-articulate that bend and play down to C. And we put vibrato on that C note before sliding out of it downward. Next chord change is the B minor 7 flat 5 to E7. We've got another variation on that same motif. We're going to play frets 10, 12, and 13 on the B string and bend fret 13 up a whole step. Those notes are A, B, C, and D, and we're going to throw in some of our best bent note vibrato on that D note before re-articulating it and playing down to the B, which we're going to hit that note with vibrato. And of course, slide out it again. And over A minor, we're going to play the A at the 10th fret of the B string. We're going to bend the G at the 12th fret of the G string up a whole step to match that A. And then we play A, B, and we bend the B up a half step to C. So the A and B are at frets 10 and 12 of the B string. And those three notes all get vibrato. So that last phrase, and of course we finish that phrase with that familiar downward slide. Now going into the second half of the solo, we once again have that D minor 7 to G7 chord change, and we're going to play a similar motif, but there's a slight variation from what we played in the first half, and he does that a couple of times in the second half of the solo. It starts out with the same notes A, D, E, and the bend into F. Now the first change is this time we're going to use vibrato on the F note. But instead of playing down to D as we did previously, this time we're going to do a little position shift up to the G at the 15th fret. Then we're going to do a quick bend of the D at the 15th fret of the B string, a whole step up to E. Release that bend and play the D note with some vibrato. And of course, we've got that big downward slide out of the D. Over the C major 7 to F major 7, again, we're going to play the previous motif with a slight variation. We're going to play G at the 12th fret of the G string, C and D at frets 13 and 15 of the B string, and bend the D up a whole step to E. but he holds that E with no vibrato this time. And the variation is to play F at the 13th fret of the E string, bend the D back to E, followed by D and C on the B string. Now we want to articulate each of those notes very clearly. And while they aren't staccato, there is a space between each of them. We're going to finish that phrase with our best vibrato on the C note. Followed by that familiar downward slide. And now we're coming up to the big finish. And part of what enables it to be a big finish is that the chord structure changes slightly. We're going to sit on both the B minor 7 flat 5 and E7 chords for 2 measures this time, and that gives Gary a little more time to do something dramatic. Over B minor 7 flat 5, we have another variation on the phrase he played in the first half of the solo. We're going to start with A, B, and C at frets 10, 12, and 13 of the B string. And we're going to bend that C up a whole step. We're going to release it ever so slightly and re-articulate it. Now Gary doesn't use any vibrato on that note yet. Then we're going to release that bend down to C and pull off to A. And then we're going to play the C to D bend twice. After we do that, with that bent note up to D, we're going to employ some of the most aggressive vibrato we use to the point in this solo. We're going to finish that phrase with a cool little technique we hear a lot in the blues. We're going to play D at the 10th fret of the E string, play that with an upstroke, and we're going to use that same upstroke to play the C at fret 13 of the B string, and we're going to pull off to the A at the 10th fret. We really want that pull off to be sharply articulated and snappy. So practice that until all the notes are really clear, and of course there's going to be a downward slide out of it. So that phrase. And now we're at the climax of the solo. And after all this beautiful melodic playing, you knew that Gary was going to let things rip sooner or later. Now he starts off with a super bluesy whole step bend at the 20th fret of the E string. So we're bending C note up to D. We're going to release that bend and then bend that same C note up towards C sharp. Kind of blur that line between the major and minor third, and that's one of the hallmarks of the blues. And now all hell breaks loose. Here's the first part of the lick that we want to get down. We're going to play the 17th fret of the high E. We're going to play the 20th fret of the B string and pull off to fret 17. That's followed by a whole step bend of fret 19 of the G string and fret 17 of the B string, which are unison notes. We're then going to bend the 19th fret of the G string up a whole step again and release that bend, followed by fret 17 of the G string and fret 19 of the D string. That's followed by the 19th fret of the G string and then the D string 19th fret again. So the first part of this lick we have, one more time. The second half of the lick, we're going to play fret 17 and 19 of the G string, bend the 19th fret up a whole step, play fret 17 of the B, E, and B strings. Then fret 20 of the B string and pull off to fret 17. That little lick sounds like this. And then we're going to bend fret 19 of the G string up a whole step, followed by the unison note at fret 17 of the B string. And then we bend that 19th fret of the G string up a whole step again. This time we release that bend. So far we have this. One more time. And we're going to finish the lick by playing fret 17 and 19 of the G string, fret 19 of the D string, and then fret 17 and 19 of the G string, and bend that 19th fret up a whole step, and put some vibrato on it. So the entire second half of the lick, played slowly, sounds like this. Here's a little more up to speed. And here's the entire finishing lick. I'm going to take a run through this solo over a backing track. I'm going to give it my all and try to do it justice, and I want to say thanks for the music, Gary. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Still Got the Blues. It really is a classic. That record changed Gary's life and his career, and it brought a lot of new fans to the blues. And hopefully this inspires you, and that's the reason we watch lessons, right? We're all hoping to push our skills to the next level and get all the enjoyment we can out of playing this great instrument, the guitar. So hey, until next time, work hard, play hard, have lots of fun playing the guitar, and never stop learning. Now, I think I'm going to have a cocktail and put on some Gary Moore. I'll see you soon.